Well, now we're going to talk about grief and guilt as a caregiver. This is something that is very common among caregivers, care partners, due to the difficult nature of this disease. So something that typically happens with Alzheimer's or dementia is there's something called anticipatory grief. So this is the idea that we're grieving something in the anticipation of it happening. So unfortunately, as we know, there is no cure for Alzheimer's, and it is something that's going to progressively worsen as the time goes along and the disease moves forward. So caregivers will find themselves grieving the loss that is to come of that person, of that person's capabilities. So this is something that's really common for caregivers and is a little bit more unique in that you're not grieving the loss of someone who's passed. It's that anticipation of that future decline and loss of that person. So it's important to recognize that and seek support, which is something that we'll get into here shortly. Something else that's common as a care partner for someone with Alzheimer's is going through multiple losses throughout the course of the disease. So I've had the privilege of working with a lot of caregivers, and they'll talk about just each decline in function and change in that person's cognition is truly a loss. So one gentleman, his wife was a really skilled pianist, and when she lost that skill, that was a loss for him. That was something that he had to spend time grieving. Also, losing, recall of people that were familiar to that person, the ability to recall their names, all of those things are a huge loss. So again, that's something that is important to just start by recognizing that, not, brushing it under the rug, but saying, gosh, I'm really having a hard time that my wife isn't able to cook dinner like she always enjoyed doing. But acknowledging that as a loss and, taking time to process that and get support is really important. Another form of guilt that's commonly experienced is just guilt about the care provided. Everyone wants to provide the best care for their loved one, but sometimes we feel guilty about, how we're going about it. And I think with that, it's helpful just to remember that this isn't anything anyone planned on. We don't say, someday, my loved one is going to develop Alzheimer's and I'm going to be a care partner. So, usually it's a pretty big learning curve. So I commend everyone for, reaching out and getting as much education as possible. That's something that, really is helpful, learning about effective strategies for being a care partner. And then just remembering that, we're all human, and this is, a lot of the time a 24/7 job, and just recognizing every, reaction, every interaction is not going to be perfect. So trying not to be too hard on yourself when you feel like you have those unsuccessful moments as a care partner. And again, as you'll continue to hear me say, reaching out for support and talking through those frustrations can be really helpful. Another form of guilt that happens a lot is when it becomes time for someone to have to make a move, maybe outside of the home, or even bringing more care in. A lot of times care partners can feel like, gosh, I should have been able to do this all by myself, and what's wrong with me that I can't. So that's something that, we commonly see as something that weighs heavily on the care partner. But with that, remembering we were never meant to, care for others alone, thinking about the past of, how people used to be more, with their community and, living with multiple family members. This is something that, truly is effective when there's a group of people. When to make a move is going to be really unique to each person. Everyone's different. It's definitely a family decision, but kind of a twofold guideline is both when the physical care becomes too much for the care partner to manage. So if you're feeling like you're at risk of injuring yourself, then certainly you're not going to be able to provide quality care if you're at risk for injuring yourself or the person you're caring for. So that's definitely kind of a guideline. It might be a good idea to look at a different situation. Also looking at, this idea of resentment. So if you're, so weighed down with caregiving tasks and that's, really your main interaction with the person, there, naturally can be some resentment that comes along with that. And a way I like to look at it is, if you were relieved of some of those duties, you could spend time, building that relationship of, what it was previous to the person being diagnosed. So you can focus on being a spouse, being a son or a daughter, and having those quality interactions rather than always being the one to provide care. And certainly the caregiving role does not end when someone is no longer living with you or you're bringing in support. So there's certainly still a need for you as the care partner. It's just taking away some of those physical day-to-day. So now we're going to talk about the idea of self-care, which is really important as a care partner because this is a really stressful job. It's certainly not anything that's easy. So it's really important to take care of yourself and make sure you're getting your needs met so that you can have effective quality interactions with the person that you're caring for. So starting out, sometimes we need self-care in the moment. I'm sure everyone's experienced a really stressful time where, there's maybe something that's happened that didn't go well, you're just feeling really overwhelmed. So really, suggestions are pretty basic for how to cope with that. Simple deep breathing. I know it's something that we all hear, but it is something that's really effective in the moment to calm us down. So, that can just be a simple deep breath, holding it in, and then releasing. Sometimes, people find it helpful to place their hand on their stomach to kind of feel the motion of, rising as the air's going in. So that can just be a nice way to kind of stop and collect yourself. I'd also recommend, if you're able to either step away and leave the person alone, or if the person's needing someone to be there with them, seeing if there's a friend or family member who can be with the person while you just step away from the situation. So that could be getting outside, just getting to a quiet place, and finding time to collect yourself before proceeding with care. Because, we know accidents and unfortunate situations happen when we're just getting to that breaking point without taking that time to calm down. Something else that's important is just focusing on our own routines. So I know sleep is something that's really challenging as a care partner, but just trying to develop a healthy sleep routine. So, there's lots of suggestions for that, but trying to, go to bed around the same time every evening can be helpful. Trying to create a routine prior to going to bed can help with sleep. So this could be, sometimes people use aromatherapy every evening to kind of get themselves ready for that release at the end of the day to go to bed. Some people like to take a bath or a shower. So just finding what works for you. Also making sure the sleep environment is dark, if there's any, outside kind of white noise or fan, just making sure it's a comfortable environment so you're able to get the sleep you need. I know sleep can be interrupted as a care partner, and that's, something that does happen with the disease, but when you're able to, just making sure you're looking after your own sleep and bringing in support if it's coming to when you're just not sleeping. Maybe that's time to look at getting some assistance during the evening hours, or, having someone else be the care partner at that time so you're not always losing sleep. Also trying to limit stress. A lot of times, we're very overcommitted, involved in lots of things. So just trying to really prioritize what's important to you and limit stressors when you're able to, because there's going to be a lot of natural stress that comes up. So if there's things that you can take off your plate or delegate to others, that's really important. Mindfulness is also something that can be helpful. It kind of goes along with our deep breathing I talked about, but this is just kind of being in the present moment. As care partners, and really anyone, it's easy to, look back at things in the past and be very critical of ourselves, particularly, when we're a care partner, really thinking, oh, I should have done that differently, having that guilt that we talked about earlier. And then, looking towards the future and having worry about that, which is certainly natural, but it can be really helpful to just kind of be in that present moment and enjoy that time that we're with that person. There's also different techniques for mindfulness. Some people find meditation something really calming and can help relieve stress. So if that's something that's effective for you, you can go to a formal meditation group, or there's lots of free apps that you can download on a smartphone or on your computer that can just kind of give you a short guided meditation to help relieve stress at different points throughout the day. Something else that's important is taking care of your own health. Research and statistics have shown us that care partners a lot of times neglect their own health because they're busy caring for their loved one. And so, things can get missed and their own health can end up failing, which can make a really complicated situation. So, definitely keeping up with your own doctor's appointments, and just making sure you're taking time to, eat healthy and exercise, so that your own health isn't failing as a result of being a care partner. Another thing that's important, a lot of care partners do experience depression, so just being aware of symptoms of depression and then seeking appropriate treatment when that's needed. So really with depression, sometimes it can be hard to vet out because there is, a very normal grief that comes along with being a care partner of someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. But depression is really, when we're looking at it being a 2-week period or more of feeling, overwhelming sadness, hopelessness, and losing interest in things that we previously enjoyed. There can also be a lot of physical symptoms, being really tired, or not being able to sleep. Sometimes there's weight loss or weight gain. And sometimes there are thoughts of death, or things might be better if I wasn't around. So those are definitely signs that you'd want to get in touch with your doctor to see what intervention would be appropriate. There's interventions including different medications that can be helpful, but then also psychotherapy, or also known as talk therapy, is something that can be really helpful. And I would recommend that for any care partner, just having a therapist or going to a group setting where you're able to talk to an outside person about your feelings and everything that you're going through, and they can recommend coping strategies and provide support. Certainly with that, I mentioned the thoughts of death being a symptom, but if you're ever getting to the point where you're thinking about self-harm, that would be something immediately you would need to reach out to someone to get help right there in the moment. That's something that that's something that can't wait. So I've talked throughout about the importance of reaching out for support. So what does that mean? A lot of times we have family and friends that would like to help out in these situations, but if it's something they haven't been through, they might not know what's helpful or might not know what to say. So sometimes it can be helpful to kind of come up with a list of things throughout the day that could be helpful if someone else was able to step in and provide that support. So that could be anything from bringing a meal in once a week. That could be, sitting with the person with the diagnosis while I'm running to the grocery store. Really simple things like that. So kind of coming up with that list and then, asking for that help. Sometimes care partners have a really hard time asking for help because, like we've talked about, you care so much and you want to, do this successfully on your own. But, reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness, and there's usually people who are wanting to give that support, and having a specific task can be really helpful. There's also options through home health agencies and long-term care facilities most of the time. There's something called adult day service that a lot of long-term care organizations offer, where the person can go and spend time at the organization during the day and then go back home during the evenings. So that can, relieve the caregiver of those duties for a certain number of hours and allow the care partner time to, get things done that they need to do and hopefully relieve some of that stress and spend some time for themselves. There's also respite care, which is similar to that, but would be overnight for a short period of time. So that's something that can be provided a lot of times if a care partner needs to leave town. That can be something that's really helpful. Home health services can provide a lot of great support. Something that a lot of home health agencies offer is companion services. So this would be someone who would be paid by the hour to spend time with your loved one while you're either getting things done around the house or running errands, but just making sure that person has someone safe to be with them and you can have that time for yourself or to do things that you need to do. So again, it's not always easy to ask for help, but certainly not a sign of weakness and something that can really help improve that relationship between the care partner and their loved one, and help things go more smoothly during this difficult process.